Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, May 6th, and this is virtual lunch number 555. Our guest today is Debbie Foster, the managing partner of Affinity Consulting Group, and this is part of our May series on strategy meets technology with Affinity. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I have never been better.
Awesome. All right, Debbie, tell everyone about your background and in particular, the genesis of Affinity.
So I accidentally got into this business. I had a bit of a knack for technology. I got disenchanted with the hardware game. And some of you on this call will remember the days of tying coax cable into a tennis ball and going up into a drop ceiling and throwing the tennis ball to connect a couple of computers together. I used to do that. That was what we did. And then law firms started getting servers and they started not walking around with floppy drives. I was selling computers during that time. So I left that company and started my own company that has become Affinity, that was really focused on software. And one day I was frustrated with how many different businesses we worked with. I would go to an accounting firm and a doctor's office and a dentist office, an interior designer and a law firm. And I was frustrated and I said, what do we have the most of? And the woman who was doing billing for me at the time said, lawyers. And I said, all right, from this point forward, we only work with lawyers. We're going to quit everything else over time. And we did that. And I started really learning a lot about software that was used in law firms. I started learning about legal specific software programs, and I met my current business partners. We became friends. We were competition. We started helping each other. And very long story short, 7 companies became one company in around 2010, 2012. We merged all of our companies together. And our jobs now really are around how to help law firms strategize for the future. And that includes technology, but it also includes people and process. So along that journey, we realized that if technology really did solve all the problems, we would just sell people software and then everything would be better. But that didn't actually happen. People would buy software and sometimes it was worse. And so we started digging into people challenges and leadership challenges and process challenges. And we started helping our clients with that because it really wasn't just about the technology. And that has been incredibly rewarding work, sometimes really frustrating. I don't want to lie about it, but it's been incredibly rewarding work to see how law firms can really take what they know about their practices and the legal process and figure out how to think differently about that in ways that allow them to be more productive, to better leverage technology, to think a little bit differently about how work gets done. And we've been able to see some amazing transformations in law firms and legal departments when people are focused on the right things. And the right things aren't always just technology. The way lawyers are supported has drastically changed. 20 years ago, maybe not even 20, and some of you might laugh and say that's actually still true today in places where I go. One lawyer had one secretary or one assistant, one legal assistant, and then we switched the ratio game up a little bit and said 2 lawyers can be supported by one person, or 3 or 4. And now you see this big move to supporting lawyers in pods with specialists who do e-filing or document production or whatever it is. That evolution of how lawyers get their work done and how they are supported getting their work done, it has really shown a big light on efficiency and productivity and connected to work-life balance. There's a book called The One Thing that's one of my favorite books that is by Gary Keller from Keller Williams. And he says, working more than 40 hours a week is cheating. And that quote really resonated with me. You can't just keep working more to get your work done. At some point, you have to stop and say, is there a better way to do this? Just having an initiative to get people adopting Microsoft Word, Outlook, and their PDF program and learning how to use that could contribute in so many different ways to how work gets done, profitability, and efficiency. My business has evolved, and the way that I consult with law firms has evolved. I have recognized that every single thing is connected. being more efficient, being more profitable is connected to technology. It's connected to lawyer support. It's connected to partner compensation. It's connected to how law firms are run. The impact that a law firm will have when it comes to change management and thinking differently about how work gets done is going to be directly in proportion to the buy-in that the firm gets from their leaders. And I don't have any problem saying that out loud to people. Some of it starts off with talking about the soft skill stuff, vulnerability. A lot of times a managing partner or practice group lead doesn't want to say, I'm worried about that because I don't actually know how to use my computer. I don't actually know how to create my own documents. When we can have those conversations about leaders being vulnerable and leaders saying, I'm in, you have my buy-in, I'm along for the ride, but I actually need help too. If I can really get someone to boil it down to why they're struggling with the perceived buy-in problem and getting on board with change, if I can get them to be vulnerable, that's the reason why. I don't know how I would slow down enough to actually figure out how to do the things that we're asking everyone else to do. Who's leading law firms these days? People who are 1 or 3 or 5 or years away from retirement. The thought of, I'm just going to ride it out the way I've always done it and other people can deal with what needs to change after I'm gone is a real challenge. And when I do my one-on-one interviews and I'm talking to an influential person in the room, whether they are named as a leader or not, an influential person in the room that is on their way out the door, I say, I want to just make sure that you understand how important your voice is here. And I know it's going to be uncomfortable and you are not going to want to talk about doing things differently in your last year or 3 years. But if I could give you a pom-pom, I would. I need you to be a cheerleader. Finding the influencers in the room, even the ones who are just checking a box, is a really important part of that in setting expectations. One of the other things I do is I try to identify those influencers and leaders, and I ask them to always speak last. If I ask a question of the group, no matter how much you want to say what you want to say, please speak last. And if they don't do it at the first break, I pull them aside and I say, hey, remember that conversation that we had about speaking last? I really, really need you to speak last. As you go, the room goes. You cannot talk first. When we dig deep into a process and someone says, we're just going to have the leader of that group come in and tell you how it gets done, bring me the people that do it. I don't want to talk to the leader who thinks they know how it gets done. Bring me the people that do it. And this is not always successful because people are people and they don't like change. But when the people who are doing the work are the ones coming up with how to do it differently, and you're addressing their concerns and their fears, because a lot of times resistance to change is people being terrified that they're going to look dumb. So how can we train them? How do we lead them down the path of redesigning how work gets done in a really safe space? So involvement, giving people an opportunity to give feedback when something doesn't work. I talk to our clients all the time about continuous improvement. You don't have to make a hard right turn or a hard left turn, but what if you just change 2 degrees to the right, 2 degrees to the right, 2 degrees to the right? You end up in a really different place. So if you know that you have a lot of resistance to change and you know that people are not necessarily on board for what you need them to do, it absolutely impacts how involved they are in the process and how much you ask them to do. Those small changes that add up can be really impactful over time. The problem is everybody wants it all done today. Can't you just tell them to do everything different today? Well, not necessarily. And that might not even be in your best interest because it backfires and people revert to their old strokes.
Debbie Foster! Well done. I'm proud to have my Affinity sign up this month. And this is a great conversation. Thanks to you, Debbie. Thanks to Affinity for supporting our series on strategy meets technology. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.